Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Propagandacast with me, your host, Imperial Delane. And sorry for the delay today. I've got rather caught up in some other things, which rather means there's also, while this cast will be delayed, there will only be one today. Yes, indeed, I know I promised for the rest of the week, but, you know, shit happens. I can't do everything, and occasionally things fail, but still there'll be one tomorrow, a double cast, I hope. Lest things go less than proper tomorrow as well, but nonetheless we're having a 1 versus 1 on Semois today. Yes indeed, in the dark of night the enemy attacks, and who shall defend? I cannot say. Well, I can, but won't right away. Of course we do have the map Semois. Again, these sort of compartments. Yes indeed, we are getting a lot of matches on Semois, but then again I'm also getting a lot of 2 versus 2s who all seem to be happening on wolf hits, you know. Rather again, let's try to keep it a bit low down there, but again sort of I always seem to be getting sort of the lots of replays of one specific time. For some reason I never seem to get a lot of, you know, spread out types. I have a bit more sort of choice, but there you go. Let's not get caught up in that. But still, Semois town, of course, again, urban territories. What does that mean? Of course, it means troops can't sneak up on you. That, of course, also means you have to be a bit more aggressive with barbed wire sandbags to sort of try and create some stronger defensive positions. Generally, you always should, but again, let's not get stuck up on that. Instead, let us get right to the opponents. In the northern corner, it shall be Chinese King Tiger. Well, yes, well, King Tiger was essentially the German, or Königstiger was essentially the German name for the Bengal Tiger, which I suppose is close enough, but really a Chinese King Tiger, not quite. But there, let's not get stuck up on that. Nonetheless, he is here. 2nd Panzer Division, perhaps, or at least just the Panzer Grenadiers. Who shall they be fighting? It shall be Blood. 1511, yes. Well, I suppose it would have been more appropriate had he been the Panzer Elite and used the Funkwagen. Yes, and let's stop the poor Dracula impersonations. Nonetheless, Americans, 1st Infantry Division, ready to show those Krauts who's the boss. And let us get right down to it, starting up. And then, Blood. You will get moving with your troops. With your engineers, children of the night. Alright, I'll stop it. For some reason I've just gotten my head. I want to make terrible. Don't lag. Do try to be polite, you know. It's not really something that within his control, unless he's downloading a lot of naughty things in the background, and that again. Well, this is a rather peculiar start again. I mean, we're seeing a 4 engineer start. Question is, will it evolve into the 4 engineer weapon support center sniper start, or perhaps barracks and riflemen? That's sort of the 2 ways this 4 engineer start can go. Fuel point being secured in the name of Uncle Sam, the Star Spangled Banner. Well, not quite in this case though. But let's just imagine it's the Star Spangled Banner. Engineers heading northwards, and of course what does this mean? That he's going for lots of engineers? Well, it rather means that early on, just like if your Wehrmacht opponent goes for lots of pioneers, he's gaining a lot of capacity to seize territory. In this case, of course, 4 engineer teams means he's going to be able to seize a lot of territory again. 4 times the territory, or at least 2 times the territory, and they just started with 2 engineers. And our Wehrmacht friend will be a lot less capable in taking territory. On the other hand, though, he does have some Volksgrenadiers, so if he can catch those engineers, he's going to put a bullet or 2 through their heads, and he's going to put a stop to them. Of course, we'll have to see how this goes, although it looks like some engineers got lost away from the munitions point. Oh, right, we're supposed to take that. Barracks going up, we'll probably be seeing some riflemen rather soon. Engineers being rather bold, going for the fuel points, it seems. Interesting. Riflemen on the way. And the Volksgrenadieren of the 2nd Panzer Division marching out in their dashing suits or uniforms. By this stage, the Wehrmacht was having a slew of uniforms sort of handed out, sort of haphazardly, depending on what they had. And of course, the Volksgrenadiers in particular, when they were formed in late 1944, in particular had that sort of situation, although some divisions in Normandy, for example, also had that bit of a situation. In particular, the 352nd had to make do with a combination of regular uniforms and uniforms from the by then defunct Afrika Corps. In fact, riflemen arrive on the field, lots of engineers, Volksgrenadiers heading towards the center, of course, completely unopposed. MG-42, backbone of the Wehrmacht, or at least backbone of the infantry forces. Medium machine gun could be used on a tripod mount or the more regular bipod mount, although that currently seems rather underrepresented in company fields and not really powerful at all. Volksgrenadiers moving in, apparently surprised that they are unopposed. In fact, all the riflemen are moving in. What shall the Volksgrenadiers do? They will drop one rifleman right away and then pop into the house. Rather interesting. And the riflemen will be in a slightly unfortunate situation. MG42 moving in, and oh dear, these riflemen will be in a slightly unfortunate position. MG42 setting up in the house of God, ready to give them the hymn of the fatherland, or at least those riflemen spewing forth from the MG42. Volksgreniers abandon the house. Not entirely sure why they want to do that and get out in the middle of the road. Engineers are retreating. Riflemen, oh, they want to get onto a proper flanking position. I thought there were riflemen moving from the west. Oh dear, these riflemen. Vlad, retreat your riflemen. They are not vampires like you. And sadly, they were cut down. Yes, indeed. Volksgreniers now moving in for a bit of a nasty position there, pinning in, and of course this is not an entirely unusual strategy to go for, and again, strategy and tactics are two different things, but I'll not try to get into that, but again, his strategy seems to be sort of bottling in his opponent right here, of course creating a strong pot. The question is, will he be able to fortify and create it strong enough? Volksgreniers are advancing, Pioneers and Engineers running amiss of each other, and these Volksgreniers are a bit too exposed out in the middle of the road. Engineers taking up position, heavy cover, riflemen arriving, Volksgreniers need to get out of there, MG42 firing in support. And what shall our American friend do now? More riflemen. And certainly he's lost some riflemen, which is not a best of start. But then again, American commanders can usually get away a bit better with losing infantry compared to, say, the Wehrmacht, because they have to run a much tighter ship. And they, for example, lose a Volksgrenier team right early on. Things can actually end up looking a lot worse for them. At least that's my experience as a level 14 Wehrmacht commander. Or rank 14. Whatever. Further Volksgreniers arrive, meaning of course a 3 Volksgrenier MG42 start. Not a bad start, in fact it's the usual one I prefer, although I also like usually also mixing in a bike if I can. Engineers coming under fire, and Engineers running away, not looking too good for a friend, but his Engineers are doing a very nasty bit of harassment work right behind the German lines, which is actually doing pretty well, in fact, denying the Wehrmacht commander a lot of his fuel and a lot of his territory. In fact, while the Wehrmacht has pinned them in sort of there, it's, oh dear, Volksgreniers need to retreat, and a cut down too late, the Volksgreniers did not make it out of there. Riflemen running straight into the line of the MG42, Pioneers finding away the tiny MP40s, Riflemen pinned, suppressed right in the middle of the market square. Pioneer goes down, and some Engineers charging in with flamethrowers, but getting gunned down by the MG42. And further forces will be needed right here if Chinese King Tiger and the 2nd Panzer Division troops hope to hold it. In this case, it's probably elements of the motorized battalion, since they would have had regular MG42s and such. The basic difference between them and a regular infantry division, besides being a slightly better troops, is they basically would be able to get to points faster with their trucks. The trucks actually wouldn't arrive on the battlefield. And Volksgreniers finally arrived, and these riflemen hanged about too long and got gunned down again. Unit preservation, know when to retreat and try to get the devil out of there, but then again, he's the American, so he can afford those losses a bit better than the Wehrmacht. Charging ahead, and look like he's making a push down in the east again. Engineers continuing their dastardly harassment work, and there we go, retreating in the face of the Wehrmacht. Volksgreniers doing their best. Riflemen dying like the rest. And looks like I was rhyming again. How shall this ever go? But looks like further Volksgreniers are arriving in the center. What shall our Chinese King Tiger friend do? Pioneers and Engineers dueling about.
Front shifting.
Engineers losing to the Pioneers. The Pioneers scoring victory for the fatherland. And I'm getting a cold, perhaps. What shall these Volksgreniers do? They seem to be just hanging about. I mean, in these cases, don't just sort of hang about. Let's just briefly pause. What can you do in these situations? Well, I don't know. Lay down some sandbags, perhaps some barbed wire, create a ensconced position, create a defensive position. I mean, you generally should always be active with your troops. Aiming just a slight bit there of creating some heavy cover could really make these Volksgreniers a lot tougher to dislodge. And of course, barbed wire will make it a lot harder for your opponent to make progress. Keep such things in mind.
Supply lines are broken.
And some Pioneers standing about, and they could be laying down mines. So things again, I mean, try to be active, try to be aggressive, bold, and try to also, you know, just not have your men standing about doing absolutely nothing. Volksgreniers about here. Pioneers laying down a bunker. I'll wager that's either going to machine gun a bunker or a medic bunker. That's can be very varied, and looks like the Pioneers here are doing nothing. Chinese King Tiger doesn't seem to have a solid grasp of the battlefield. Volksgreniers heading northwards, perhaps hoping to put a bullet through these Engineers' heads. Engineers with the M3 grease guns. And the grease guns, an attempt at making a sort of American version of the MP40. The MP40 sort of being the premier excellent submachine gun that was cheap to make, although the PPSH-40 was certainly also not a bad one. Engineers hit a mine, Pioneers go boom. So of course keep that in mind. The grease gun had some problems. I believe it was partly in maintenance. I do believe it was partly because it was actually a bit hazardous to the troops using it. But Krieg barracks up and a half-track. The 2nd Panzer Division apparently landing some half-tracks away. Half-tracks actually being a bit of a premium in the Wehrmacht divisions, and usually most armor divisions and Panzer Grenadier divisions would only perhaps have a company or two of armored half-tracks. Also the reconnaissance unit would have that bit. Most would have trucks or something else to sort of rely on. And in some cases, bicycles. Yes, indeed, bicycles. The 17th SS, for example, had one battalion, or was it company, fully equipped with bicycles. And looks like our American friend is bringing in the slightly heavier weaponry, going for the mortar team to bombard. And my goodness, he's clearing out the MG42 with a few shots. Mortars being one of the artillery units that can deal directly with units inside buildings, otherwise some units can usually resist artillery, in fact, of the heavier caliber. But mortars do have a better chance at unrooting such troops. Engineers and flamethrowers advancing. Half-track will have to hold the line alongside these MP40 equipped Volks Grenadiers. And they were actually equipped like that by in the war. That was in fact partly in their attempt, but let's not get caught up in that. Engineers and riflemen charging ahead. Volks Grenadiers getting burned alive. Solid assault here, but the half-track is a bit of a problem. The riflemen and engineers can't really harm it much, although the mortar can do a bit of damage to the half-track. Mortars can do damage against lighter armed vehicles. Certainly not something to forget. The half-track is in fact taking quite a bit of damage, it looks like. But the mortar rounds all miss quite drastically. And MG emplacement opening up. Damaged engine on the half-track. Volks Grenadiers moving in to provide support. Riflemen and engineers retreating, but the Americans are pushing through here in the east, having hit numerous mines, it seems. But this spot is still in the hands of the Wehrmacht, although they are not really having much luck in holding it, and I'm rather suspecting this is perhaps becoming to be a slightly unholdable position again. They are paying more to hold this area than it's actually worth. Volks Grenadiers going down to mortar fire. Get out of there, Volks Grenadiers. Oh dear. That's basically just giving that mortar team free veterancy. Medics from the medic bunker moving in. Pioneers all on their own as engineers moving in, but the engineers will have the advantage. And let us go have a look at Chinese King Tiger. What shall he be doing? Grenadiers, and he does have the sort of field, the Kampfkraft sensor up, but he's not getting that much, and currently he's been suffering a bit to those mortar rounds. Down to only 2 infantry units and 3 pioneer teams and that half-track. But the half-track gets recruited. Volks Grenadiers holding the line, but one goes down to mortar fire. Needs to get away out of the range of the mortar. And now the Americans are charging across on ground. The half-track firing away with its machine gun mounted. The half-track's machine gun should not be underestimated. It is in fact pretty good within the right situations and can do quite a bit to stop any American assaults and flanking attempts. But these Volks Grenadiers need to get out of range of the flamethrowers. Free flamethrowers, and he keeps them in heavy cover. Very bad, but at the same time, just look at all these units getting suppressed and pinned down by the half-track. Again, a half-track can do quite a lot if used properly. And now Grenadiers are advancing to save the situation for the Wehrmacht. And it looks like some mortars are being produced as well by Chinese King Tiger to support the 2nd Panzer Division. Infantry simply getting suppressed. All of this engineer inside the building could be lost. Get out of there, engineers. One shot and you're dead, mate. And there we go, engineer retreating, but will he be able to make it out of there in one piece? Will he? Apparently so, quite fortunate. And now we are seeing a triage center, but no weapon support center. All the riflemen are going for BAR, so looks like Mr. Blood will be going rather heavily for the infantry bit, and of course that rather depends on Chinese King Tiger then to sort of get a lot more infantry to sort of deal with that. Keep his half-track alive and perhaps get another MG42. I mean, he's going to be expecting an infantry fight, and with a mortar in support, it's going to be a rather costly one where he has to keep moving, otherwise his troops will get blown to bits. Pioneers in the east getting engaged by riflemen with BARs.
We have lost a unit.
And our pioneer team is lost to these children of the night as the Vlad's troops advance. Krieg barracks continuing to launch forwards elite grenadiers, or Panzer grenadiers I suppose, since this is the second Panzer Division. Others are hanging about right here in the front. German mortar doing a bit of counter mortaring after getting fully crewed up. Pioneer securing this territory. Looks like our American friend is rather realizing that he's not going to gain much from a frontal assault here. What's he going to do? He's going to change the axis of attack and simply go through here where the opponent isn't so strong and hasn't quite the same level of defenses. This is called shifting the axis of attack and going for the better spot. Grenadiers and Volksgrenadiers heading towards the east, but they'll soon be running into quite a mess. Some riflemen are getting forced away by Volksgrenadiers and Grenadiers. Mortar getting hit by American mortar fire and gets cleared out most tragically. And goodness gracious, an assault force moving in, lots of BARs and an incredible amount of flamethrowers, but engineers getting dropped rather quickly. In fact, some retreating. And the Germans are retreating as well. What shall the German forces do? The half-tank is sort of hanging about, but now it looks like to be on the move. And something's getting equipped. Possibly these Grenadiers are getting a Panzer floating quite a bit of manpower though. Quite more than unfortunate. But there we go. Also quite a bit of fuel. He ought to be pressing his advantage a bit more, but sadly he seems a bit incapable of that, although he's getting an MG42, and now he's making an assault on the base. And there we go. Panzer rifleman could get scorched and killed. There we go. Rifleman down. BAR left behind as well. But the half-track gets hit by mortar fire. Panzer and fire right in the American base, although I'm not entirely sure what he actually expected to do with this. I mean, he could perhaps knock out some of the buildings, but at the same time the American mortar is bombarding his troops while in there. And now a 30 caliber machine gun is up. I'd rather suspect now with the 30 caliber machine gun also coming up, we will need to get out of there rather quickly. Otherwise this base assault will be for naught. Pioneers lost. Oh dear, this assault is turning out to be a disaster. Grenadiers need to retreat now. Grenade lobbed at the MG4, the heavy machine gun, but the Grenadiers need to retreat before all is lost. I am not kidding, and there we go. Lost the Grenadier team to the fire. Absolutely disastrous. Again, you need to know when to get out of there and when to hang about, and this was definitely not the time to hang about for biscuits and tea. So we just lost another infantry team, and Chinese King Tiger is simply losing too much too quickly. Sturmarmory now on the way. The Americans seems to have broken the grasp of the 2nd Panzer Division. MG42 hiding here, but the Americans are quite solidly holding a lot of the map and a lot of resources, plus making Chinese King Tiger bleed manpower like never no tomorrow. Although then again, at the same time, he's floating about too much. He needs to get many troops out on the field as possible to really put on the pressure on his opponent. More Grenadiers, half-track, holding the line desperately, but it is simply outgunned in this case, I'd say, and 2 damage from mortar fire already. 30 caliber machine gun recruit supply yard on the way. Assault phase completed. MG42 and Volksgrenadiers is advancing while the half-track does its best to hold the line. Medic bunker so far has only picked up 1 wounded German soldier. Grenadiers arriving, and now mortar fire being directed against the medic bunker. This bunker will not be up for long. MG42 getting inside the building. Volksgrenadiers advancing. I mean, the Sturmarmory could be useful here, and Nebelwerfer, perhaps some heavy armored cars, perhaps a Stuke 4. But then again, he needs to be quick about it. He needs to stop sort of hanging about and not really doing something. And he needs to be more aggressive in his resource spending. Rifleman goes down to a grenade inside the church. 30 caliber now setting up, bombarding the German positions with heavy machine gun fire, raking them down. Volksgrenadiers getting rushed. No, it's Grenadiers, but more Grenadiers are arriving. A grenade right here could force away the rifleman right there. Some riflemen are retreating. Volksgrenadiers going down to mortar fire. Bunker knocked out. This is probably going to be a happy sign for the mortar team veterans who won. Yes, indeed. Grenadiers engaging the riflemen and are looking to win the fight. Half-track repair, but the 30 caliber now turns against it. Sturmarmory on the way, but Chinese King Tiger simply cannot hold the center. His tactics are just not strong enough. He's Grenadiers not really focusing on getting the kill in. And of course, due to some rather unfortunate unit preservation, he doesn't really have the method to counter that mortar team, unless of course he decided to charge in that half-track. But he didn't, he pulled it out. And now the MD-42 inside the house is becoming the target for the American mortar. 2 men down in 1 shot. Get out of there, MD-42. Storm Armory still going up. False Grenadiers getting reinforced. 5 command points. This is, not really good either. I mean, after 3, it actually becomes slower. The accumulation of command points. Actually, again, that becomes much slower, so usually you'd just be better off spending quickly rather than saving for something. So, of course, what is the situation currently? Well, currently, Vlad has broken out. He's rather doing some nasty things to Chinese King Tiger, who constantly seems to be floating resources, constantly seems unsure as where to commit and unsure of a strategy. I mean, he had sort of an idea here, but he didn't really commit to it properly. No sandbags, no barbed wire, no mines, not much either, really, and that really seems to have bitten in the arse now that he's being forced back, losing troops in particular on this rather costly assault on the American base, which achieved absolutely nothing. He does have a storm armory now that could turn things around, but then again, Mr. Vlad could have something ready as well, and he probably needs to be ready for some sort of armored or vehicular assault being used against him, because he's rather currently lacking in anti-vehicular firepower. And in particular armor, the heavy machine gun can be used with some armor-piercing rounds, but that's about it. But Chinese King Tiger needs to really step up his game and become much stronger in how he handles things. Grenadiers getting suppressed by the 30 caliber machine gun, not looking good. They will need to retreat. Grenadiers pulling out of there. And these Grenadiers are not looking good. They need to retreat. 1 catches on fire, and Chinese King Tiger, why aren't you retreating? You will not gain nothing. In fact, you've just lost 2 Grenadier teams. 3 Grenadiers in that fight right there. That was terrible. Storm Armory still not getting used. Americans seizing all 3 victory points. And there's, although that is in fact just barely in time, since he barely has any victory points himself left. 21. MG-42 covering the center, but now it's getting bombarded by the American mortar once more. Veterancy 2, my goodness. Americans securing the west as well. Not much left for Chinese King Tiger anymore. Heavy armored car on the way. Grenadiers are flanking. They could move in after this mortar and clear it out. And some riflemen here getting engaged by the Grenadiers in the north. 1 Grenadier goes down. Flamethrowers are ready, but Grenadiers are getting hit by mortar fire. Oh dear, Chinese King Tiger, what are you doing? There we go, first armored car on the way. Another heavy armored car will be coming soon. Not entirely sure how to categorize this game, and he's still floating company command points. Yes, indeed, I'm not claiming this is the highest level game, but still, it had some interesting bits, and of course, it does show the whole point of, being aggressive, spending your resources, and exploiting your advantage, and of course, sort of trying to lay down some defenses while you still hold the area, but sadly, Chinese King Tiger did not. Some good ideas, but not so good execution of them. Now he's sending in an armored car alone. Will he be able to achieve anything? Will it go after the mortar? Looks like it. Second armored car has arrived, and let's go look at Vlad, who now has gone for airborne. And the armored car doesn't even manage 1 kill. German troops are sort of hanging about. What shall be going on? No sticky bombs, it looks like, though. Wait, there we go. In fact, sticky bombs, and that means, of course, the Chinese King Tiger was much too bold. His Puma now with a damaged engine. Grenadiers getting engaged, spreading them out so they can't really focus the firepower, sadly. Off track, unavailable for help, but more Grenadiers are moving in. Puma not really pulling out of there when it should back to friendly lines. Instead, it stopped up for a bit of tea. And this is sadly going to end up badly. And now, in fact, Mr. Vlad has pushed up through here. Another sticky bomb on the Puma. I mean, don't move it in intervals. Get it back to safe territory. Safe territory is not slightly farther away from the riflemen. Safe territory is your own damn territory. Now anti-tank guns being dropped. This Puma standing out in the open needs to get away. Anti-tank gun getting dropped. More Pumas arriving, or heavy armored cars, whatever. Heavy armored car knocked out. Not really sure what Chinese King Tiger is hoping to achieve.
Resource drop is now available.
And some grenadiers pushing southwards. So, well, I suppose. And this one sort of charging in. But again, what is he hoping to achieve? I mean, it just seems like he's hoping that the heavy armored car will cause everything of Vlad's to crumble. But, you know, it doesn't quite work like that. Although the mortar... Right, you don't park in front of an anti-tank gun, mate. He doesn't seem to be lacking a bit in the general rules of engagement. Although Grenadiers and Engineers are now moving in, hoping to clear out the anti-tank gun. Will it work? Will it work? Will Chinese King Tiger finally be doing something right? Apparently the anti-tank gun gets cleared out. Grenade could be lobbed at these riflemen. Come on, grenade. Engineers moving in to clear out the mortar team. And a grenade from the... Yes, indeed. Rifleman hit by a grenade. My goodness. And the mortar team pulling away. But his attack seems to have lost all vigor. No. A tragically under-supported attack is now falling apart. Engineers hiding inside... The Pioneers hiding inside the building with a flamethrower. Scorching some American riflemen out in the open, but they are themselves taking losses. Grenadiers getting out of there. And the Pioneers were lost. German troops trying to secure that fuel point right next to the base. Not quite having much luck though. And again throwing in armored cars in the hopes that it will somehow save the situation. Right into the front of the anti-tank guns again. Why he isn't getting any naval werfers or some fresh mortars is a good question. And now, I mean, why is he using them like tanks? I mean, a heavy armored car, any sort of armored car, is not a tank. You do not just run them up right in front of the enemy and fire away. They do not work like that. They are armored cars. They're movement things. They're more there for sort of reconnaissance and force. They're there to sort of flank your opponent, do some nasty damage, get out of there. They're not there to sort of soak up fire while blasting away. They do not work like that, and if you try to use them like that, they will die, just like you're seeing there. Keep that in mind. Very important.
This race will be taking Berlin by Christmas. Front shifting. Krauts are grabbing territory.
And 3 armored cars so far lost. Volkswagen is moving in to flank. MG42 opening up on the American troops. Grenadiers trying a harassment attempt right here, but they did not count on this barbed wire and are now getting annihilated. Because Chinese King Tiger utterly forgot about this and also forgot that this is actually a pretty common trick. Because of course they will just run into the line of the MG. Mortar continues to fire away, and these German troops are awfully clumped up. Don't clump up near a mortar, Chinese King Tiger. You ought to be learning something by this stage. German mortar moving in though. MG42 cleared out. Tisk tisk. And how many kills? 25 kills for this mortar. Absolutely amazing.
Lost a unit. They're all dead.
Anti-tank gun cleared out. Grenadiers need to retreat. Will the German mortar achieve anything? And a forward back has actually gone up here without me noticing. Not looking too good for Chinese King Tiger. At all. He had a good start, but then he absolutely squandered it, threw it away. Rifleman getting gunned down. Volkswagen is hiding inside the building. Grenadiers trying to reinforce right in front. Oh dear, losing them again. Not really good unit. Preservation again. Know when to retreat, know when to hold your ground, and he definitely does not know that. And now it seems everything is collapsing. 30 caliber opening up, gunning down the Pioneers and the Fultz Grenadiers. They need to retreat. And he didn't. Well, I'd definitely say the game is over by this stage. Let's just sort of speed up to see how this goes. At least, will he get the half? No, he doesn't even. I mean, send them straight to your base. In these cases, you can't do anything. Another Puma lost, and it takes him quite almost a minute or so to actually get that half-track finally entirely back, and he keeps on sending in armored cars. I mean, this is not really good at all. So, I mean, let's in fact try something different. Let's just say this is it. This is pretty much game over. And let us cut to another game, a much shorter one, and then sort of again try an operation. Yes, indeed. Just a bit quick to show something else, to show how you can push through an advantage in the early game. If you gain one in the start and then sort of push through. So, stay tuned for the next part. And welcome to part 2 of this little cast. Yes, indeed, I'm going back for one of those operations, although this was sort of a halfway decision. I figured, why not? So, indeed, we are going to have a look. And now it's Langres. Yes, indeed, we won't be holding a much of a long break here, though. Langres, and who shall be fighting in the northern corner? It shall be our British friend, Patriot. Or Patriot. Not entirely sure of that, but he is here nonetheless. 43rd Infantry Division of Essex. Who shall he be finding? It shall be our dashing friend, Imperial Dane, in this case leading the forces of the 12th SS Hitlerjugend. Quite a veteran, solid division, fought quite well. And let's get down to it. And of course this will sort of be a lesson in sort of how you can put up some pressure on a British commander in the early game and sort of push through. I mean, and that is of course one of the ways I usually deal with the British. In fact, that is sort of find a weakness and then sort of hammer it through with brute force and basically SS tactics, where just keep attacking violently, a bit casually about your own losses. And this is of course the thing that makes it rather hazardous and risky, but at the same time sometimes you just have to do it. And what does he do? Of course he's going for this fuel point, and of course he's probably going for some sort of armor charge. And again, that's usually what you see if they go for a fuel point right away. If they go for munitions, they're probably going to be focusing more heavily on infantry upgrades. Going for the Volksgrenadieren. In this case, probably representing some of the more inexperienced troops of the division before they were fully trained, but still thrown into the fight. Hiccups. Pioneer securing points. Continuing onwards. Volksgren is continuing. Lieutenant on the way. Truck packing up. The usual business there. Again, go for the lieutenant, then pack it up. Thus, you don't really have any troops that will be sort of mumbling about without the supervision of a lieutenant right away early on. And you can quicker get to the resources, and then of course afterwards you can get the infantry you need. Of course, that's sort of the curious disadvantage of the British, and they will be most likely the ones to float manpower. And why is that? Because sometimes, I mean, if you're going for the upgrade, of course there'll be a stage where you won't really be able to use your resources, because again, you're rather dependent on a few buildings for your main infantry. In fact, this one. So that of course is a rather curious thing. But pushing onwards here, Volksgren is heading towards the center again, sort of trying to figure out the disposition of my opponent as the British. Will he be going here? Will he be going here? Here or here? I mean, those are all sort of questions you want to find out as a Vampre, because then you can sort of begin laying down a strategy. How do I want to approach this? Where do I want my defenses? And all such things. With Consection heading out, spotting this with my Volksgren and a bike, I quickly move in to intercept. Bike charging ahead with its light machine gun. Opening up on the British troops out in the open. And the lieutenant is sort of sneaking about, being rather pleased with himself. Volksgren is finding a way at the reconnaissance section. Bike being a bit of a nuisance and catching them on the wrong side of the fence. This is certainly nice for me. And now joining in with the Pioneers. I mean, I might as well use all available firepower against those dastardly British. And we have another infantry section getting ready. Volksgren is on the way, and this chap was about, I don't believe, was around 12, I think. Wasn't entirely bad, but to bike quickly back for repairs. Volksgren is doing other bits then. Don't want to get too hasty right away. Second Volksgrenadier team is ready, and I usually go for the bike against the British in case they go for a Brenker, in which case I will need the bike. And the lieutenant rather boldly goes to harass and of course cut me off from these resources. Not a bad idea, but the Volksgrenadiers and the bike are moving in to put a stop to this. And infantry section advances. And of course our British friend is probably set on something involving quite a bit of fuel. In fact, looks like he is flashing up quite a bit. Let us go briefly look at them. No, he's going for an infantry section at least. So I was slightly wrong as of yet, but then again, 3 infantry section is not entirely off. Lieutenant running away in from the bike being a nasty opponent. Firing away, who shall be the victor? Dashing across open ground, the lieutenant runs and dies. Shot in the back. British troops holding the line here. Volksgrenadiers advancing as well. Bike getting the devil out of there. And going for the skirmish phase, and that is the Krieg barracks. And fighting away here. Volksgrenadiers holding up behind some haystacks. Opening up. Pushing onwards. And Volksgrenadiers joining in with the other Volksgrenadiers. Skirmish phase is complete. Infantry section goes down, and the bike moves into support as well. Volksgrenadiers firing away at the reconnaissance section. Not much luck for them though. Suffering quite a bit. I mean, that's not going to be changing much though, although this infantry section doesn't really need to be in there. I mean, it's one guy is firing out of 5. That usually means you need to get them out and sort of fire in support. Although more reconnaissance section, apparently our British friend is going for a rather more mobile tactic strategy. Firing away, bike joins in to open up with more firepower. I mean, might as well when I do have this extra bit of firepower. Volksgrenadiers retreating, pioneers going for a bit of harassment there. Reconnaissance section charging ahead. And I am throwing a bit of resource, but then again I am sort of caught up in this fight right away. Bike gunning down, in fact. Reconnaissance sections taking quite a bit. Lieutenant in sort of support position. And flamethrowers getting equipped now for the pioneers. All a bit quiet at this stage, but the infantry section from the south moves in, but it's standing out in the open. Although it does get a few Volksgrenadiers down. Not looking too good for me, but flamethrowers are now moving in. Scorching down the Britisher. The Tommies, and now he's staying out of position in the barn perhaps. No, not looking too good for our British friend at the moment. Certainly been able to rather dash his hopes from the beginning off, and I'm certainly not going to stop, because at the same time though I'm sort of bleeding ever slowly, but not probably as hard as him, because he's rather continuing sort of the same tactics, sort of the same open ground tactics, and perhaps not trying enough to sort of catch me off guard. Krieg barracks is up. And I'm basically waiting to sort of push the advantage. There we go, blobbing up and rather forcing me away from the center. Fresh Volksgrenadiers arrive. And I have gone for Blitzkrieg and assault being prepared, because what do you do when you see a British blob? You bloody well attack with all force and vigor. But in this case something goes wrong. I actually end up sort of accidentally move it, and that's is actually one of the main disadvantages of assault, the Blitzkrieg assault ability. It takes so little, and then all of a sudden you've got 50 munitions wasted. It's rather the major disadvantage of it. Your opponent can retreat, anything can basically happen, and then sort of you got 50 munitions out the window. But the British are not too late to push the advantage here, of course. Taking territory, pushing onwards again. Do not be afraid. Onwards, onwards, always. And I go, the friend who was sort of cautious. And at this stage I'm rather thinking, well, I need to go in. It's all or nothing. Which is, well, I rather often say that, in fact, against the British, but that's beside the point. Getting ready, and what am I doing? I'm getting a half-track, I'm getting some flamethrowers in there, and I'm getting a pack. Volksgrenadiers, some with MP40s, perhaps even. Bike taking quite a bit of damage. British troops facing off against all these Volksgrenadiers. Bike trying to get away. Engine is damaged, but no! The bike! No, not the bike. But the half-track arrives and saves the situation. The day. Forces of the 12th SS pushing onwards. Securing the strategic point right there. And what shall be going on? Volkskrans engaging the infantry section right there, taking a bit of fire. Half-track sneaking about in the north. Lieutenant running away, but sort of handing her back, retreating. And there we go, pushing their charge, moving in and catching the British commander off guard. Half-track suppressing rather immediately. Volksgrenadiers popping out, assaulting, and flamethrowers. I mean, I really have the advantage. I sort of have him there, and of course I know his position is sort of advanced. Without the protection of an MG, what do? Attack, attack, attack. And this is again is sort of the situation you always want the British opponent in. Just basically drop in, throw some grenades, get in some flamethrowers, and do quite a bit of damage. The half-track suppresses. The grenades do the real damage. Pack 38 advancing. Volksgrenadiers are taking quite a beating, but I'm continuing reinforcing from the half-track, and I'm continuing doing quite a bit of damage to him. Another Volksgrenadier team arrives. One retreats though, and a heroic charge from the lieutenant. Captain is ready. Lots of grenades right there. Clears out 2 Tommies. And the Pack 38 arrives, and it's going to be opening up there. Assault reserves getting ready. Infantry assault team, Sturmtruppen. Flamethrowers burning away at this. Another Volksgrenadier team pulls out, but the half-track still stands. And further Volksgrenadiers arrive to the field. Not looking too good for our British friend. Desperately holding on, and I'm not giving up. I know I have this. In the end, I might suffer heavily, but if I give up now, I might actually lose. It's sort of these sort of win. It's either win or lose. And sometimes you just have to push it, no matter the cost. More assault, more grenades, more Volksgrenadiers, more death, more glory. And there we go, lots of British troops dying right away. Stormtroopers now arriving to push the effort. Pack 38 knocks out the headquarters command truck. British troops retreating. Bike, Pioneers, and the Sturmtruppen arriving. More veteran troops of the 12th SS, probably even some troops from the 1st SS to act as the veteran cadre. And the British friends are not looking too good at this stage. Very quickly, but pushing the assault nonetheless. Stu 42 ready, Pack 38 ready as well. Not going to give up at this stage. So he managed to break his back right there, and all this within 10 minutes basically. And usually you'll actually see when you get high up, higher and higher within games, you can actually see games rather quickly ending like this. Because again, both players get a lot more aggressive, they get a lot more prone to taking risks, me included of course. This of course also means you're more likely to lose quickly as well, but then again it can also work off in some ways as well, like here for example against the British. A Stuart is moving in, but the Pack spots this due to partly thanks to the help of the bike. Assault being used once more, Stormtroopers holding in line, firing away, assault grenades being dropped. Stu 42 arcing about, but the Pack 38 cannot be fooled. The British troops are once more retreating, but there's no headquarters command truck, so they run into the point where all troops enter from off map. And the Stuart is looking rather worse for wear, and there we go. Mr. Patriot has retreated rather quickly with the 41st Infantry Division in the face of the 12th SS Panzer Division. The British cannot hold their ground, so there you go. Rather 2 games, one a bit longer, not so novice, and then of course this more experienced game to sort of give them an idea of what you can do with advantages. Hard to press onwards, of course against the British it is easier, but then again sometimes you just have to push it, and of course you sometimes have to know what to support with it, and that sadly is what Mr. Chinese King Tiger did not. He didn't really have the support to carry out the assault, and that sort of fell through. And of course during the preservation, whereas of course I was a bit better in sort of keeping my troops alive in the longer run. That's sort of the things you have to keep in mind. Half-tracks are good of course, but you're not that good either. And then again, 8 kills, hooray. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed these 2 games and the cast in general. Feel free to comment and all that, and if you enjoyed it, why not subscribe or tell your friends, and if you didn't, well, why not send in a replay of your own. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers.